Yeah.
welcome to Beelzebub, Illinois. Like, that's not, no one's doing that. Hi, I'm Gabe.
And I'm Kat.
And we're the Ghouls next door. Talking about spooky stuff. Yes. We are closing out the spooky month. This is our last week of the hurrah of spooky month, but we are the Ghouls Next Door, so it is always spooky all the time. So we will be continuing our haunted series throughout November as well, and that should be really exciting.
Forever and ever.
Yes. And then, we'll switch it up when we switch it up. But we are the media literacy podcast from a horror lens, where we explore the real life, historical, and actually happening horrors explored in cinema. And today we're talking about haunted attractions and things that have the the gall to call themselves a haunted attraction when they are not.
Yeah.
So
a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. One should maybe even not be in a column. It exists in its own little sphere.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, stay over there.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So we're going to be talking about haunted attractions. We have been to quite a few together and apart as like the Ghouls and before the Ghouls. Recently, we went to the Eastern State Penitentiary for their Terror Behind the Walls, which it's now called something
Halloween
else.
Nights.
Halloween Nights. Thank you.
Yeah.
It has evolved. So anyone who visits the Philadelphia area during the Halloween season and has preconceived notions of the Eastern State Penitentiary experience, it's different. It's
very different. Like they redid the whole thing. It's like a whole leveled up experience, and that like before it was just like one scare, and now it's like it's a choose your own adventure of scare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember when I first went, it was like my first year here in Pennsylvania, and it was like I went a little too early, and it was definitely one of those like they're herding you through and you just kind of like I've run through them. So I was like done in like 15 minutes, and I was like, wow, okay, that was a lot of money, and I'm like a poor college student. So I spent all of it just to get here. And then I was kind of disappointed. Like I had my fun. I remember it being really fast and not quite what I was expecting, but that's because I was spoiled coming from Florida when we had Halloween Horror Nights at like our amusement parks. So
you had way more scary stuff set up to elevate your expectations to unreachable heights. Like
yeah, I mean, going from like an entire park worth of spooky things to just like a few halls in this honestly haunted place.
It's disappointing when it's really fast because you're like, I built up so much emotion behind this. And I remember when we went, it didn't feel super quick that time, but that's because we waited in the longest of lines. And also we were with your mom and family, so we were just like, it was more entertaining, I guess, a little bit too.
Yes. Probably. We were also with one of my best friends who is terrified of everything, including one of his biggest fears is butterflies. So like there's oftentimes there'd be times when we were walking home and he's supposed to be like he's significantly taller than me, is male, and I would be like, okay, let me walk you home. And I'm like this tiny little like Tina like walking this grown man home. Happened all the time. And so he went, which is like, I don't know how we convinced him to do that. And so that was added. That was added to it. And yes, and my family.
To the fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I consider him your family, so it's just
yes, very true.
Grouping him. I feel like The last time we went, it was really fun just because there's so many different ones. You could go to like 5 different haunted houses where it's like, so that's not quick. And also there
Mhm.
was the skeleton dancing, which is maybe my favorite part just because it was entertaining and like so much happening. Um, but yeah, I didn't have this amusement park experience that you're describing. I had a random house on the street where I lived growing up that through a haunted house. I don't know who this person was. I don't know why
Mhm.
our parents were like, yeah, go ahead. Go into this stranger's house filled with haunted things. And like it was like a house-made haunted house. It was like pretty next level for the fact it was just made by like in the neighborhood, you know?
Mhm.
Um, but it was like a highlight of every Halloween I remember growing up. But it's like still really weird to think back because it's like they were not, we didn't pay to go in. Like it
Yeah.
was not anyone we knew. This is
Just a
they were like,
stranger.
come into our house. And we're like, yeah, 100%. Don't kidnap us, please. And like, yeah, our parents were just like, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go into the
I
stranger's house full of scary things.
I feel like kids don't really trick or treat the way that we did either. Like, there's a
Yeah.
lot more stranger danger kind of fear. Like, we'd just be like, "Okay, come back when in a
We
few hours."
yeah, we got the tail end of the Stephen King era time where
Yeah.
they're just like, send them. The
Yeah.
kids don't come home. I mean, that's less bills. No, I'm kidding.
No.
I'm kidding. I'm
No,
kidding. I'm kidding.
our parents cared.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, like, now, there's trunk or treats, or you go to, like, a
yeah.
specific location for candy versus, like, just going up to neighbor's house, which is probably the best thing to
Probably
do.
better. Yeah, a little less like choose your own adventure, but definitely probably better
Mhm.
than aimlessly wandering at like the age of 10 across a wide space full of strangers, inviting yourself to their houses too, which is like crazy.
Yeah. I would say one of the highlights from the last Eastern State Penitentiary experience we had when it was Terror Behind the Walls before this most recent one, so pre-pandemic, was so they started that thing where you can wear glow necklaces to indicate that you're okay
Yeah.
being touched or taken. And I mean, this is like a pretty big place. Like, they have checks and balances in place. So you're not as afraid of people taking advantage of those things. That's not to say that that doesn't happen. So the thing that I remember is, besides like the fact that I was taken away quite a lot, was that we towards the end there was a part where like someone working there was like trying to get my aunt to go somewhere, and like me
Yeah.
and you went up and we were like, what's going on here? And they were like, okay, well, we'll take you. And then they put bags over our heads
Yes, I
and
remember. I
then
was there.
brought us into the real haunted cell block and left us in one of the rooms. And I was thinking like the rest of the houses, like all those experiences going through the cell blocks, like that's fine. I don't have any fear that there's a real killer going around. But
Yeah.
there could be just a random person who's like, "Let me put this bag on your head and steal you away." And like we could have never come back from that.
Yeah.
Like that could have been the time.
We would have been on the news. They would have been like, wow, real haunted place turns real scary. Murder, I guess. I don't know what would have happened.
Yeah, I don't know
But
what happened to us.
yeah,
We
I think
disappeared.
pre-Panini Press,
Yeah.
we made lots of questionable decisions, like from young age to present. Like,
Yeah.
uh, that we're very lucky we were alive. But we are. And now people get to listen to us say words.
Mhm. Very true.
It's a
Very true.
victory, I guess, for
And we
you
will
and me.
for all of us. We will have a conversation with someone who was there at the birth of the haunted experience at Eastern State, and someone who was involved in the recreation of it, and how it has evolved and become more of an experience than just like one attraction.
Yeah.
Definitely leveled it up to that same, not exactly Halloween Horror Nights at
Yeah.
Universal, but definitely up there. It
Yeah,
was
like a
something.
quality fun time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So we are in this episode going to talk about two I think, buzzword things.
Yeah.
One being the House LLC franchise, which just got greenlit, and we just found out about a fourth one coming out.
Yeah.
Though I'm confused by the trailer because it's really just all footage from the other three, which
Yeah.
makes sense. And then we are also going to talk about a horror real life situation with McKamey Manor.
Yes.
Um,
What a
and if
situation that is.
yeah, and if you haven't heard about it, we will give you the 101, but I'm sure you can find the information as well. But why don't we talk about the films?
Sure, yeah, let's do it. Films.
All right, so let me tell you what House LLC from 2015, the first one, is about. I did watch like all of them, so I kind of give a little crash course.
Overachiever. No, I'm kidding.
Crash course on just masochist is what it is. So Hell House is about 5 years after an unexplained malfunction causes the death of 15 tour goers and staff on the opening night of a Halloween haunted house tour. A documentary crew travels back to the scene of the tragedy to find out what really happened. It's directed by Stephen Cognetti, and they do, I'm pretty sure, all of them. So
Yeah.
the first one is like there's this documentary team that's like something happened. It starts with like live footage of people really excited to go into this haunt, and they're going through the pieces, and then something goes awry, something we don't know about. We see things that probably shouldn't see, like people who are clearly working there running around trying to go somewhere, and then all of a sudden when people get to the basement attraction, that's when they're screaming and there's like, what's going on, chaos, everyone's trying to leave, bunch of people die. And it's all like unexplained. And to me, I'm just like, why didn't anyone just go back in there? Like the authorities can't go into this building. Like, I don't know. They just boarded up. Like they didn't even like investigate. Like if my kid vanished or a person I loved vanished in this house, I'd be like, no, we're gonna go in this house, figure it out.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
So there's a documentary crew, and they are trying to get down to the bottom of what happened at this at Hell House, which is a franchise. So Hell House was previously an attraction in New York. Something happened where now they can't be in New York anymore, and they are now in Pennsylvania, in Abaddon, Pennsylvania. And if you're wondering, Hell House is a real haunted attraction in Pennsylvania that we did not go to, but you can.
Yeah.
Just who's got time for that? But it's stationed in the Abaddon Hotel, which rumor has it was established because the owner liked the name of the town, because Abaddon is a demon that opens a gate to hell or something.
Yeah.
Sure.
Did you look it up? Is it real? Is that like a real thing?
I mean, Abaddon definitely is. I'm pretty sure a demon, but there's no Abaddon, Pennsylvania, I don't think.
Okay.
Like there's a real Hell House. It's not in Abaddon. Like who names a town? It's like
I was like, that sounds like really not like Pennsylvania to have a town named after a demon. Like, I feel like there's a lot of religious people who would be like, not in my
we
state.
have Bethlehem. Like you can't. We have Bethlehem. Like we have like a bunch of ones where I'm like, what? Very like. Welcome to Beelzebub, Illinois. Like, that's not, no one's doing that.
Now I want to know what states or cities, like, within
have demon
the country have demon names.
Yeah.
If you know, listeners, send us a list.
Please let us know.
I'm not going to go there or do anything with the list. I just want to know.
Yeah.
I just want to know.
Absolutely. So the hotel owner is dealing with some spooky stuff, and that's why it is closed. They had unalived themselves, and some people went missing in the hotel. It's pretty vague. And so then this Hell House troupe took up shop in this abandoned place for who knows why. And then events occurred, and now there's a documentary team going to investigate. And during their investigation, they interact with this one survivor who informs them that there's tapes, because they recorded their entire experience, and it becomes this it's always been this found footage thing, but now we're watching the tapes. And so the tapes reveal what happened, and essentially they're there, they're making the house spooky. And
Yeah.
then there's things that are happening that they didn't make spooky but are spooky happenings, right?
Yeah.
There's particular clown that isn't supposed to move its head but seems to find itself around the house all the time.
Yeah.
um
Happens to be like the scariest looking clown of the
the
clown
scariest clown.
trio that exists.
Yeah, he is terrifying.
Yeah.
And just like standing there. Like I will say the best part of Hell House is like those little tension building spookiness, like just having something out of the corner of your eye. Like I love those for found footage. Or like like the little things that were happening was really
Yeah.
cool. Or like there's times when the house gets like really weird and it like goes back in time. So like they're in the
Oh yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah. I
in the
remember that now.
kitchen and all of a sudden it looks like a regular real kitchen like before it was abandoned. And
Yeah.
it's like everyone's like freaking out. Those things are really great. And I was like, I would love it if it really were just like haunted.
Yeah.
And it was just like spooky for spooky's sake. But they're like, no, we need to give it a reason. And so they tied in like all this cult stuff that just gets even wackier. And I was like, what are we doing? Like, because to me, it was like the deep house, how we really
Yeah.
liked the beginning. And then when it started mixing in like this spooky, it was
Yeah.
like,
The
this is
cult
dumb.
situation.
Why
Yeah.
bring in a cult or like satanic cults and stuff? Like that's not real, first of all, and that's not fun. No, it's just like it's lazy. I just
Yeah.
immediately write it off as lazy. Like, it's not anything interesting.
Yeah, it was like really fun until that. I would that like they could have just ended it right before that and it would have just been a 10 out of 10 movie.
Or like really, blended in. I will say the way that like starting with like something went wrong during this attraction, showing us the behind the scenes footage,
Yeah.
really like set them up to essentially fail. Because it's like, how are you going to deliver? Like, how are you going to show us what like is going to really make it worth our time? And that's really hard to do. And they, I would say, did not do a great job at the end there.
Yeah.
I enjoyed like getting to see like, oh, that's when the one person walked by because they're going to investigate this thing, and that's what those people saw, right? Or it's like, oh, we
Yeah.
saw the clown leaving, and everyone's like, what? That's weird. Why would
Yeah.
one of the clowns leave? But once they start like trying to explain things, I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
That's not how you do things. So as soon as you bring in spooky stuff, like or occult things, I'm like, okay, this is dumb. And the rest of the series is like really hard into the spooky, like into the satanic cult stuff that I think is hilarious. Like someone was like,
Yeah.
the best part of our film was the very flimsy explanation of our villain.
Yeah.
So, you
Interesting.
know what we need more of? This guy, because that's what we care about. And so the second one is like, the house is now definitely condemned, right? Like people cannot go in there. And now they have like
Yeah.
police patrols. So this new investigative team collaborates with the one sole survivor from the last documentary team to go back into the house to find out what happened to the last documentary team slash the Hell House crew.
Yeah, and then like
So
they saw that video, so like why do they want to go back in there? It seems very sus.
yes, yes. And then I mean what was interesting was they did show like videos of people doing like dares, like teams
Yeah.
like live streaming and being like, all right, guys, I'm gonna
Classic.
go in for 10 minutes. And then like the one I thought was pretty cool is like one guy goes in and he sees a pair of legs, like this person standing on the stairs, but like you can't see their head.
Yeah.
And he's just like stops and then he doesn't talk anymore. And it's like, yeah, this video goes on for like 12 hours until the camera dies. And that's it. It's just this like stare off. And then like, his followers were like calling the police a bunch and being like, go investigate this house. And the kid was gone. And I was like, that's cool.
Oh
Like
no, not
less
the
is more.
kid. Yeah,
More.
yeah,
And they're like, let's go in. I will say in the second film, the acting is horrendous. It is really painful.
yeah.
Um,
Well, they
there-
killed all the good actors in the first movie.
yeah. There's like one actor in particular that's very bad. And she doesn't get a lot of airtime, which was really good. But everyone was kind of like
Yeah.
what are we doing here? But it really, really leans into the satanic cult thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, sure. It had a few things that I thought were pretty fun. There's a few techniques. There's like an instance where like things are all chaotic and like people
Yeah.
are running around and they're experiencing things abnormally, right? So like halls are changing kind of thing. And so one of the characters is like frantic and running and has a camera and he encounters this girl who's sitting down and we would know her from the previous film. She's on the phone. She's like, I know, mom. I told you that we're already dead. And her like voice changes. And it's like, and they're gonna die too. And it's like all it's like scary. And I was like, that was pretty rad.
Yeah, I know. Once we get through opening night, it'll all be downhill from there. No, Mom, I already told you I'm dead already. They took us to hell.
And Mitchell's coming with us.
Yeah.
But then it's like they run upstairs and they see the room and there's like they see the hotel room that says 2C, which is linked back to the first one.
Yeah.
And one of the characters is like, we can't go in there. And then the guy who survived the last documentary crew is like, why not? He's like, because I saw your film. That's why we cannot go in there. It's like,
that's the first.
why are we
That is
in
a
here
plot
at
hole
all?
in and of itself.
Like you saw the first film.
What
Why
do
are you here?
mean?
They do the same thing where there's like a twist ending at the first one that they replicate in the second one.
Cool.
And I was like, okay. I was like, are you guys gonna do that really? Okay, cool. Which is like fine. So here's the big thing about the second one, which I think is really crazy. So Kat, in the second one, like we get more from the hotel owner who like wanted to settle in Abaddon. And we get this behind the scenes footage of there was a security camera of the guy who was running Hell House in the house before Hell House showed up here. So he's just talking to this guy. Somehow he's connected to this man that we don't see. He's off camera. And he's explaining his financial issues. And the guy's like, well, why don't you just set up shop in this hotel? And he's like, sure. And I'm like, why are you here? How do you know him?
Yeah.
Like, and it's literally like the answer is like magics, sinister magics. He brings people here. He just wants people here. He wants things to be recorded. It's very loose. And so that happens. And then in the end, we see like the owner, it's revealed to be someone that we saw the whole time. And he's like, I need you people as sacrifices because Hell House, this hotel is on like a hellmouth. And so in the basement, poorly like CGI'd like hellmouth opens up and it's just like a portal to hell, right? And I was like, okay, cool. But then what? Because there's a third one. So I was like, how many people in here?
Did they go to hell in the third one?
No. So in the third one, there is a new creator that has bought the hotel. It's this like self-made millionaire guy who's making
classic
this art installation
guy thing to do. Yep.
He's making this art installation in Hell House, and it's supposed to be like, this whole experience. And the whole time there's like another news crew who's taken over for the last news crew, and they're like, has anyone seen the videos? And half of the actors have not. And other ones are like, well, at least we don't have to sleep here, like those kinds of things. And so it does kind of the same thing where you see sprinkles. But let me tell you, the ending of this film, the third one, is so bonkers. Like, I was like, you did not just do like so the guy, so he's also has financial problems because that's how you get here, right?
Everyone the guy who's rich has financial problems on it.
Yes.
Wow.
And so we had right. So he's here, he's involved, but he also, there's this like a car accident that happens, and they reveal as if this is a big deal that he had been technically dead for like 2 minutes or whatever. And that means something. Anyway, he has this scar along his face that is done with like putty, like the special effects putty, and there are literal times where like the lighting in the room is so bad that you could just see it's like an entire different color. Like it looks like they put like clay on him. And so like hilarious. And then so he's like, it's really choppy. It's not like it has a mix of people like going places where they shouldn't go. Mixes of like things popping up in the background. My favorite thing is that there's these fully white mannequins in these white rooms, and I was like, I need one of these mannequins to start moving. I was like, I need this mannequin. And sometimes it does that. Like there's one and it like, like does the head turn? And you're like, no. I was like, that's great. That's the best part of this whole like film was like literally just those mannequins in that hallway. Anyway, he so the whole time I'm like, why is this happening when a Hellmouth opened up last time? What happened to the Hellmouth? Like, what was the purpose of the Hellmouth? We don't get an answer, right?
It was that they didn't think they get to make another film, but they do.
So like we have to answer it. So so they're gonna have like opening night, and the detective team here discovers that there's financial woes and that there's something going on. Like there's these motivations and that it seems dangerous and people are caught up in things they shouldn't be caught up on. She's like talking to priests and stuff. So she tries to get it to stop. So she like releases the story that he doesn't have any money. People still go through with it, right? The actors are like, whatever, we're here. And so they have opening night, which I had a problem with because they let in like 4 people, but they're acting like these actors are performing this play throughout the house. So if like things didn't go bad, how many times were they going to have to do this entire play through the whole house?
4 people's not enough
at a time. Yeah, and there's all people outside. I was like, that's insane. Like if you have like different actors in different rooms, sure, but it's the same. Like no, I was like, this is impractical from a production team standpoint, first of all. But here's the thing that really set me over the edge. So our main guy, who's got all the money, he meets them for like their last dinner or their last supper before opening night. Okay, I'm using my words specifically for their last supper. And he sits amongst them and he gets there pretty late and he asks the server, I would like a hamburger or something. And he's like, the kitchen closed at 10. He's like, you know what, just give me some dinner rolls. And he's like, sure. And he's like, also, I'd like this. And he names like a really fancy wine. And the guy's like, we don't have that. And he's like, fine, I'll take the house red. So then he is given bread and wine. And then people are eating the bread and tasting the wine. I was like, he did not just eat of my body and drink of my blood then. He did not just do that. We did not just so in your face do that. But yes, right? So that happens in the most unsubtle way. And then she like confronts him and he tries to convince like our documentary girl not to go in and not to attend opening night. But she's like, nah, I'm going to do that. They go to opening night. It's going well. It's going well so far. Things are going weird with the lighting, of course. But people are going through. There's performances. And so then like chaos happens. Like the guy, the Hell House, the Abaddon Hotel owner shows up and starts murdering. And then all his cult people show up from the hellhole and start murdering everyone in this like crazy way. It's just like, just go, just leave. And I was like, this place is a fire hazard because there's no like easy escape, like everything. It's just a maze. It's a labyrinth. And I was like, this is a fire hazard. Like this is not OSHA certified. I don't think we're supposed to have any kind of performances here. And then all this stuff is happening. Everyone's dying. I was like, I swear to God, if they do the same thing that they did in the first 2 films with the spoiler ending, I'm going to be really mad because there's no way that all these people could be talking about the experience if they're all dead. And then our main guy does something.
Classic main guy.
He does something, question mark, question mark, question mark, that where everything like there's a fire and like you're like, oh my God, everyone died. This is so sad. And then we cut to like interviews where they're like, here we are with the survivors. And you're like, survivors? They died. What are you talking about? And it's because he like sacrificed himself because he died once, and now he he did something Question mark, question mark. And now it's reversed and everyone's alive and they didn't die.
So
Not the original Hell House people, just the people in this movie.
So Jesus died for our sins.
He did. He died for our sins and our Hell House sins, and now we're alive. And in the end, you see the crew from Hell House, and they like wake up as if nothing happened. And you're
like the original crew.
Mm-hmm. You're like, what's going on?
Well, and that's how you get the good actors back. They're alive again.
So you're like, oh my God. They're like, oh my God, we're okay. Wow, this is great. And then they go to leave and they can't leave. And I was like, it's a pull door. They're like, you know, and then,
I hate when I gotta push.
And then, you know, Christ shows up and he's like, you can't leave because we're all dead. And this is where we live now. And it's like, I was like, okay, but where's the other documentary crew? Like, they're not here. It's just the original crew.
They weren't. The second movie is forgotten.
They also, I totally missed out. They also like did these flashbacks where they showed the 2 other film crews like having dinner or something at a diner or at the bar, and he was there. He's like passing them as they walk out, or he's like in the cubicle next to them. Hilarious. So for me,
yeah.
So I was thinking, like, in the second one, what really got to me is it reminded me of my spiral when I was trying to explain the Paranormal Activity franchise and how absolutely angry I got because the second film ruined everything.
Yeah.
Because the first one, Katie's like, here's what happened. Here's the lore. Enough. That's enough said. It was perfect. It was brilliant. It was tension building. It was wonderful. It left things to the imagination. And the second one was like, here's an explanation for things we didn't need explanations for. And they're wrong. Like, you made them not make sense now. You rewrote the history, which is like, why'd you do that? And then the rest of the series had to make up for the fact that you ruined everything.
Yeah.
So like we have to make sense of it, and we have to build. And
that's what the third movie was.
Yes. The second one was like, we leaned really hard into the worst part of this film, which was the satanic cult thing. And then we just kind of left it up, and then people still wanted it. So we had to make it up. And we put a whole very poor Christ allegory in the midst of it. It was like, wow, what a time. So I don't really have any analytical things to say about the Hell House series because it's not really that kind of film. I will say the first one was fun.
It's for funsies. Or I guess it's like an allegory for how sometimes if you go into a haunted attraction like thing with the goal of like exploiting people, that is not going to be a good time.
No.
Maybe.
I think there are also people were like, what?
Yeah.
Because like you're like, why didn't they leave? And they wrote that into the script in the first one. They were like, okay, something is revealed off camera that keeps them here. And it could be anything. Yeah. For Kat, it was romance. It was unspoken romance was her guess. Mine was, again, financial things.
When they were in the field and they were like...
I was like, it's because I love you.
We have to do it for him.
It's either that, or it's financial problems, or this guy's dying, right? Like, those were the things. We were like, what is it, right? In the second one, they're like, it was financial things. But it was like, why?
Yeah.
Why anything?
Yeah, it was like such a weird loyalty. It was very much like you're watching Naruto and all you've seen is Sasuke be horrible to Naruto and everyone in the Leaf Village, and you're like, why do you all love him so hard?
Yeah, like,
this is just abuse. Maybe everyone just needs some therapy.
Yeah, and I think this was like, I don't
also
know.
Like, didn't the first movie like sell well? Like, didn't it do well?
Hell House?
Yeah.
I think it's like a cult classic. Like, I think it's one that people like in our sphere really like. There are diehard fans, which is why we got a second one, and then like the diehard fans are why we had a third one and now a fourth one, because that like, second one, I don't like. Yeah. Who watched that and was like, yeah.
I'm just like, why was it so bad? Like, if the first one did well, you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
what went wrong. But I guess as you said, like also like the way Paranormal Activity 2 kind of like inserted all this lore, it was trying to do that.
And you try to find like no name actors so it feels more authentic.
More real, because it is found footage. Yeah.
I will say the third one, the acting was better than that. The second one was really rough.
I mean, that's
It
not
was
saying much because
painful.
I watched the first 10 minutes and I felt so uncomfortable I needed to turn it off because
I
they
felt
were really
uncomfortable.
bad.
And
They
I'm
were
not like that. But I felt like that every time the
Yeah.
girls spoke words. I was like, honey, please.
I was like, you are all clearly very much reading lines from a script. And I
Yeah.
mean, I am not a professional actor, so do I have that much room to talk? Not really. But also, it hurt.
You're not trying to be an actor. Like, you're
Oh
not
yeah, I
in
do
this
not have
film,
aspirations of being an
Like,
actress. Yeah,
this
no,
is a
that's
person
true.
who's making money off of doing this. But yeah, like, and the second one is so weird. Like, the ghosts get really weird, or the cults people. They like call the one girl like honey a lot, and they like infantilize her.
Well, I
In this
mean, that was
really
a theme
bizarre
throughout
way.
the first one. Like a lot of the writing for the first one was
It was
very
super
cringy in
cringy.
terms of like, this is what men think men are.
Yeah.
Let's admire them, treat women like they aren't people and instead are objects. Let's actively seek out moments to
Yeah, to be
objectify
gross.
them and be very cringy and gross.
Which I mean, people who are gonna make this weird hole in the wall haunted attraction, I don't put it past them being like that. Like,
Yeah.
just the way that they behaved felt pretty authentic to me.
It felt very much like frat boys made a haunted house.
Yeah.
That was the vibe. It seemed like frat boy make haunted house now. And everyone's just going to be cool with that, I guess.
And that's why they would stay, because
Yeah.
frat boy make haunted house don't believe in haunted.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, if, people who really
Frat boy in a
understand.
haunted house wants to kiss his friends, but doesn't want anyone to know.
Frat boy in a haunted house is overly misogynistic to cover up for his own queer ideas.
Or just insecurities in general. They were
Poor
trying
frat
really
boy in
hard.
haunted house.
Poor frat boy in haunted house. They're really just going through it. They need a hug and someone, their dad, to tell them that they love them. And give them a good fashioned fist bump of affection, I guess. I don't know. They're having a time.
When we were watching it together, the first one,
Yeah.
I might not have been, I wasn't really paying attention the second time we watched it, but I don't know if I invented this in my brain, but I can't remember the names, but the one guy who's been recording the whole time, who's like the worst of the misogynists, who was like watching the girl.
Yeah.
I, for some reason, remember there being hints that he had something going on with her and that it was like a secret. I don't know if I just made that up in my brain to like give more drama to this thing, because I just was like, maybe they used to be like, I don't know. I invented in my head that they used to be together, or they're secretly together, which is why he's very weird and why he's so like dramatic about connecting with other women and why he's really weird about being around her. It's kind of like a Jesse's girl situation. Yeah. But it also, to me, I was like, there's got to be something there. Like, that's the degree to which he was being like that seemed like. But I also could just be. He could also. I should be on the writer team because I give them better excuses than what they had.
He could also just have had feelings that were never reciprocated, and he's like, I don't know how to just be friends.
Yeah,
so
he had a Jesse's girl situation.
Yeah, exactly. It was like so.
It was gross.
Yeah. But the film was funny. Like, I was not media analysis seeing it either.
No.
I was just like, this is a ridiculous fun time. And if I media analysis it too hard, I'm going to genuinely hate it. So I'm going to stop doing that. Because I remember at one point I was like, the haunted stuff just need to kill these guys because they're really irritating. I just really need them to be done here. Clearly, they are walking into this situation ready to die because that's everything that they're doing is leading up to this. They're just like, I'm going to be the entire worst, so that like by the end you're just like, oh, thank God, the cult ghost finally just made them stop. It must be like, I think it's a trope. It has to be a trope at this point because that is a thing. It's like Captain Gaslight, plus his friends who like are really weird and creepy, hang out with one girl and be horrible to her the entire time, or Captain Gaslight is love interest. Also, they go underwater now. And they're just doing that for some reason.
Yes.
Yeah.
Before we move into your part, just the last highlight of the film is the terribly mediocre piano playing. Both of
Oh my
us
God.
messaged each other because I was like, this ghost is just doing like practicing his scales. Like you were like, this is the most mediocre piano player as I was typing that out because it's like bam, 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 bam.
He was literally just practicing his scales.
It's like the most like music could be really creepy, and it literally was the most basic of piano playing. Like they were literally like, okay, we got a crew. Who of us can play? It's like I could do chopsticks, so I could do like a quick tune, right quick. Yeah, and the second one they tried to like, I don't know what they're trying to do because they were like the piano playing is linked to a kid who is going to come into this house in the future because the house told him to do that. And he was just playing on his little like
how the house
electric keyboard, even though it sounds like the
talking to people from the far away.
Sends them letters and stuff and is like, come to this house. It's so funny. In the third one they didn't play up the music happened, but they weren't trying to like, I was like, stop trying to explain this song. It's so bad. Like this ghost just trying its best. The one cult member has been practicing
those scales. He's doing a good job.
It's like, oh no.
Did he get better over time?
No,
that's
it's
what
literally the same
does.
song. It's literally the same song.
It just doesn't get any better.
Yeah. All right.
Well, it was a weird flex, but they did it. They did it.
They were doing their best.
Yeah. Also, it was a fun movie. I'm not saying like don't go see it. It was like it was like entertaining. I'm sure we'll watch the next one. It better have better acting though, because I won't be able to finish it.
I have to complete it now. I have to know it. Why?
Because you put in the work, so you have to like.
What happens after we've been resurrected?
Yeah.
Because they keep surprising me. And it is free on Tubi, so go check it out.
The new one or the one we watched? The one we watched.
Yeah. The other two. The second one is also free on Tubi, and the third one was free on Vudu with commercials.
Yeah.
So that's just a little thing for you.
Yeah. It was fun. What I'm going to be talking about is less fun.
It's terrifying and gross.
I'm going to start my section off by saying allegedly a bunch of times because there is no court case against McKamey Manor, to my knowledge. So all of the things that are stated, other than like the stuff they have on their website, because that's like literally just what they advertise, is all alleged. There's not like an actual case against this man, Russ McKamey. The operation of this torture situation for free, drive far away to go do this for some reason. Time is still open and is also like changed a lot over the years. It seems like it's like gone from kind of scary, kind of upsetting to very scary and very upsetting to kind of scary and kind of upsetting again. Kind of fluctuates depending on like kind of what's going on. And as I said, all of this is alleged in terms of the stuff I'm going to talk about with people who have said things about the manor, their experiences post, etc. All of this stuff is very public knowledge. McKamey Manor has been a very buzzwordy kind of
every Halloween
thing. I've heard of it. Gabe's heard of it before this. Like, it's a situation that's been around for a while, and we're outside of the like hype part of it. Like, it was like really the talk of the town for a while, and it's kind of under the radar a little bit more now. Like, people aren't really actively talking about it anymore.
Can you explain to our listeners who might not be familiar what McKamey Manor is?
You're right. Let's do this in order. Gabe, your producer.
I got you.
So if you do not know, if you have not heard of McKamey Manor is an extreme horror attraction, in quotations, and that's the nice way of putting it. it has some pretty disturbing things happening at it, but essentially it is an extreme haunted attraction is what they call it. And it's
Mhm.
run by this guy named Russ McKamey, a man who's allegedly seems to have a lot of psychological issues, as stated by many previous attendees, ex-partners, and those critical of the attraction. What happens at this location doesn't really suggest that anything's haunted. It's more about manipulating fears based in violence. There's lots of physical methods that they use, abuse that they use with the people who experience I forget what they call it, the manor, I guess. Like there's like, they call it something where
Their run.
yeah, you have to like go through a practice.
There's like a run, I
Yeah,
think.
and then you have to there's like the actual experience. There's like it's a multi-tiered situation.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
essentially, the process has changed a lot over the years, but the experience is way more based in like Hostel or Saw than like a supernatural or paranormal scare experience
Mhm.
that you would more commonly see if you were going to like a haunted house or if you were going to like Universal in Florida.
Yeah.
Like, it's like more just like jump scares and like if you have the glow necklaces on, they'll take you into a room and say scary things to you, but you're not like getting physically hurt. You're not having
Mhm.
your nose broken. You're not having your teeth removed, having your head shaved. Like the level to
Yeah.
which that this has escalated is pretty intense. And a lot of people who are interested in horror and want to experience, they kind of describe it. Russ specifically on his website describes it as, do you want to experience your own horror movie?
Mhm.
And the experience is oriented around that, where he finds out what you are scared of and
Because you
manipulates
fill out the
that
flyer.
to torture you, in
Mhm.
essence. And they say it's all theatrics, and that people aren't actually getting hurt, but
You see the videos.
there,
He shows the
yeah,
videos.
there's a lot of alleged evidence to suggest that that's not the case. And there's a lot of red flags associated with the specific attraction, but people do seem very interested in it because it's unlike any other haunted house that's really out there in terms of, I don't even know if you
I
can
mean, there are
classify it
extreme
as,
haunts,
yeah, but
but I don't like
yeah,
even extreme haunts, it's like you go and you're in like a dark room alone and there's some things happening, but there's not to this degree
yeah.
of like torture and psychological abuse.
Yeah, and that's at the end of the day, it really seems like it's more of a torture porn abuse factory that
Mhm.
manipulates people and kind of exploits them to get the fantasies of this man out of his system.
Mhm.
And the experiences that a lot of people will describe are horrifying. I've watched an insane amount of videos about this at this point. There's usually I'll read a lot of stuff. It was a lot of videos on YouTube kind of explaining what was happening and like other people's past experiences. But if you want to know how you would get to experience this, the past location was in San Diego, California. It was recently moved to Tennessee. It was going to move another place, but essentially there were petitions and people an outcry against it, so he was unable to move to, I think it was like
Mhm.
Illinois or Idaho or one of the I named states. And they were like, no, don't come here. We don't want
Mhm.
this. Please do not. And he did not move there, but he ended up moving to Tennessee. So that's where it's currently housed. But as I said, like it's developed a lot over the years where it used to just be like you message him on Facebook and he texts you,
Mhm.
come into San Diego, and you signed a 2-page waiver and you're just chilling. And now it's a 40-page waiver. You
Mhm.
have to apparently, according to their website, be 21 or above, or 18 to 20 with parents' approval.
Which is new because they used to let teens in.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to have a completed sports physical and doctor's letter stating you are physically and mentally cleared, pass a background check, be screened via Facebook. I just like FBI. No, it's be screened via Facebook, FaceTime, or phone. Have proof of medical insurance and sign a detailed 40-page waiver, as well as pass a portable drug test on the day of the show. So I ended.
You can't even be like intoxicated to go in there.
Yeah, and there's like a lot of rules too. I'll get into that, but I'm trying to just like going through the website end of it. Like he has an entire site that like looks like it was made in like the 90s when the internet was just making an appearance.
Like a flash website.
It's like crazy looking. Like the font, you can't. It's wild. It's an entire mess. But I guess that kind of adds to the scariness of it, in that like you're like, what is this? This doesn't seem real. It seems like I'm in that movie where the video games become real. It's like a really bizarre site. But essentially on the site, it says, be warned, McKamey Manor is not your standard boo haunted house. This is an audience participation event in which you will live your own horror movie. This is a rough, intense, and truly frightening experience. You must be in great health to participate. Last year's haunt was absolutely nothing compared to the new McKamey Manor. Essentially, they say it's a survival horror theater. Each tour is based on your personal fears that can last up to 6 hours. Each guest will be...
It used to be 8 to 10.
I know. Yeah, it's changed a lot. And they've had to make a lot of changes because of a lot of the backlash that took place. As well as there's like petitions, Facebook groups, all against it, usually occupied by people who have done it before and feel very strongly that no one else should have to experience this. As well as like people who haven't experienced it, but just like feel very strongly that they don't want it in their town. Within Tennessee, there's been protests about it. That's how he didn't move to like Idaho, Illinois, or whatever it was. Lots of people are mad about this man and the McKamey Manor in general. But yeah, as Gabe said, it used to be a lot longer. You would get 8 to 10. Now it's only 6. And it says each guest will be mentally and physically challenged until you reach your breaking point. One thing that's interesting, that's like such a weird, because it's like they're super physical and shouty and mean to the people participating, but there are so many rules you have to go through in participating, and you can't curse, you can't touch the props or the people, which is like, how are you going to go through this entire haunted experience and not touch anything, especially like when you're being pushed, etc. Like it really just provides a lot of loopholes, because there's apparently supposed to be a $200,000 reward, or $20,000.
20,000, which has never been given out because people are kicked out before they can finish.
Yeah, $20,000. I was like, wow, he has a lot of money on this. No, $20,000 reward. But like, yeah, no one's ever gotten it because there are all these rules. So he like he's protected himself legally ultimately, so that he doesn't have to, because you can't do so many things there that basically pushes anyone who would be going through this out, as well as he just kind of randomly decides that you're done at some point. If you think about the average 10 to 20 minute haunt or theme park at Halloween and what you've experienced, was it really that interactive and scary, is what he says. At the new McKamey Manor, you will experience thrills you have never seen before. You will be tested to your very core. If things become too much, you can always quit if we let you, which is the operative word. So there's been a lot of hate against McKamey Manor. He calls them haters. It's like a whole ego situation that's kind of confusing and cringy. But essentially, a big thing is that like you can be thrown out for any reason. You can't curse, push, vulgar behavior, weapons, smoking, drugs, alcohol. You have to sign this waiver. And honestly, after signing the waiver, you like can't sue him, even if he's broken your nose, broken your arm, etc. So there's like a lot of just shady stuff associated with it. And another just like big red flag that's just like super weird is that like to get in, you don't pay for the experience. You gift dog food. Which is like a donation because it was a nonprofit when it was in California, which is just like so strange to me. that
Yeah.
this like torture experience was a nonprofit, because I guess if you like traditionally think of nonprofits, that's not generally the vibe.
Yeah.
It's
It's usually to help people.
yeah. And so yeah, he takes the dog food and donates it to like the Greyhounds Association or whatever. So like that part's nice, I guess, but it's also just like a really weird thing because you have these actors that I assume because you are not receiving financial compensation for this are not being paid.
Mhm.
Are not
So what are they getting out
You
of
do
it?
not have any financial means to train people if you don't have income unless you're receiving like grants from the government because you're a nonprofit. It's all like a really confusing and kind of weird time. But yeah, they say the donation of dog food is voluntary, but it is kind of a part of the situation. And it's all very shady kind of how it went down. So I specifically ended up watching a video from Gabs. That's how they spell their name on YouTube. It's Gabss. And they kind of talk about their experience because they were one of like the first people to go through McKamey Manor before it like even really became as more popularly known. They described like that they didn't have any introduction to it really, and that like
Mhm.
they had seen a few videos, and the span of like what happened was that like they googled extreme haunted house in America, got an ad for this, messaged them on Facebook, and then that night received a Facebook message back from Russ McKamey,
Hmm.
and then the next day went. So like
Oh,
they
wow.
heard about it, were like, cool, yeah, it sounds interesting. Went, they were 19 years old. They did not have the 40-page waiver. It didn't sound like they needed parental permission. It didn't sound like they really needed anything to lead into it. And like you can watch their video, there's like a 50-minute one and a 30-minute one. And it's just like they're talking about their experience. And it was really stressful to watch because some of the things that they described take place at McKamey Manor were really stressful. One thing that's like kind of commonly known about it is that it is really physically challenging. There's a lot of violence that takes place during the attraction, extending from like just like regular like pushing or like kind of like how we experience at the Terror Behind the Walls, where they just kind of grab you and they take you a place. There's that,
Mhm.
but it's also like they'll push you down and they'll punch you and they'll pull your
Mhm.
hair and they'll put bags over your head. And there's a lot of water-based stuff that they'll do.
Mhm. They
Um,
also, like, make you vomit and then eat that vomit or eat
yeah.
things that you shouldn't be eating.
And it's like it's really confusing because what they basically said, like what Russ McKamey says, and he's like an entire situation of a human, which I'll get into, but is that essentially it's all theatrics, but you have people who exit these situations with literal broken noses, with like bruises,
Mhm.
with teeth missing, with their head shaved,
With fingernails missing.
fingernails missing. Like they're implementing like actual or allegedly implementing for not to be sued.
Mhm. Torture techniques.
Implementing torture techniques. There's people who've claimed to be waterboarded,
Mhm.
and like almost drowned. Gabs is one of those people, and that's on the earlier ones. Like she even goes into like explain like hers situation and her experience compared to what she's heard from other people was relatively tame comparatively. And her experience sounds like a literal nightmare. Like I was watching it and I'm
Mhm.
hearing like her voice shake and like crack and
Mhm.
like just reiterating like what was literally torture. Like there's no situation in which that wasn't torture. Like they locked them in a pool and like they had this much room to breathe. Like you can watch the video if you would like to, but it was like they were pouring water on their head, pushing their head down into the water. Like there's lots of like medical things that like it is very obvious that people who are the actors in this are not trained to deal with. Like
Mhm.
you can have dry drowning. Like you can be out of the
Mhm.
water because you've inhaled so much water and drown. Like that is a real thing that
Mhm.
can happen. So like they're putting them through so much water stress that like literally is torture because you could die from it. With like,
Mhm.
luckily there have not been any deaths from this situation, but there's been a lot of like psychological and physical damage that has come as a result of this. So I've watched a lot of videos, as I said. I highly recommend listening to Gabs's experience, because it seems like they really knew McKamey for a long time. They even ended up managing like his Facebook and like were a part of his like team for a little bit, because that's something that's really common apparently in like a lot of the early people. And largely most of the people who are speaking out against the manor are people who were a part of his early crew and kind of like watched him, Russ specifically, devolve into like further unwellness, which it seemed like he was not well from the start, but that like as time progressed, he proceeded to get worse and worse. And there was like this way in which he kind of switched, where he would be really sweet, and then you would see like this really scary and creepy look in his eye while all these events were taking place that made this just really uncomfortable for everyone involved. And
yeah, there's also like, I think with like people who are going back and like either becoming a part of the crew or doing it again, because I know there's like that one person who went through it a second time, is that when you're done, they really like amp you up. Like you just start like, wow, you're so strong. You really did this thing. Like you're crazy. And I'm sure there's like this validation that they just don't get elsewhere. And so that could very easily bring you up. You know?
Yeah, and I think it's like a lot of different things. It's hard to like really fully explain, because one, I've not experienced this, but also it's like I'm also just going off of like the stories of other people. And what it seems like is that it started out as like something that was kind of uncomfortable, but wasn't to the level of which it is, or it like evolved into now, as well as in like when it was still in San Diego towards the end before he moved to Tennessee. And what it seemed to be is that he kind of progressively and more progressively became egotistical around it. And it became very much more about like people need to like Russ McKamey or the world, like, or you don't get to exist anymore. Like he very much has like created this kind of uncomfortable like cult mentality, both within like the Facebook community that he manages, as well as just like his surrounding people around him. And it seems that like it's all very much to like feed his ego. And there's been a lot of accusations against him, specifically from his like ex-partner, who was heavily involved with McKamey Manor and its first ideation, who's like, I watched something from her as well that was really upsetting. And I link all of this in my blog. Just everyone can go do all this stuff yourself if you would like to. If you want to watch all these counts of like what was taking place, it is disturbing but interesting. Essentially, that like he has been accused of being abusive in relationships. He's been accused of being what was described by his ex-partner was that he wanted to shoot her, like said that to her in passing, like was like being nice, and then like had that moment where you like have a switch turn off, and then like turned to her and said like, I've had fantasies of shooting you. She said that he like expressed passive pedophilia towards children. There's like a lot of really just red flaggy things about Russ McKamey. And that like he kind of gets off on literally torturing people. So that part is also just very upsetting. I'm losing my train of thought a little bit.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things for me is like I definitely see like a lot of like hate online about like the people who participate. And like there's a lot of just like, well, you know what it is. You signed up for it. It's like, but you don't. Like to a certain degree, you do not. And at the same time, like nobody knows what they're doing. And at this, like I'm more concerned about the people who do it, right? Like that they're like getting off and enjoying this thing for free, like all the red flags versus just like these are clearly like vulnerable people who are being taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And for why.
And also it's very much for why, because like no one's making any money off of this situation. I know part of like why he moved to Tennessee was so that they could move away from the nonprofit status and potentially make money. Like I know he accepts donations now to the manor, but essentially another just bigger flag is that like a lot of the staff who work there, he used to hire children and then now doesn't, but like they are not trained. They're usually just like people who have an interest in inflicting pain on people, or people who have like
SeaWorld.
yeah, or just like yeah, it's just like really they don't seem to have like CPR training. They don't seem to have like any knowledge of like the actual situations that they're inflicting on people, the literal torture they're inflicting on people. And like there's all these law protections that he puts into this contract that like it doesn't seem like the same energy is being put into like the creation of the actual event, if you
Just
could call
cover
it.
your tracks.
It's very much to cover your tracks because like it sounds like he's even had like actors who have spoken about their experience, and this like the one guy is like, I don't have a line. I just kind of get carried away. I can like really get into like hurting these people. And it's just like a really weird vibe ultimately. But one thing that was like really upsetting, and if you're listening to Gab's story, is essentially like they go into like how it devolved, and how like he kind of transformed this Facebook community that was once like really like kind of interesting and supportive to like this really, if you say anything bad about him, you get kicked out. I followed another YouTuber who like went in and infiltrated the Facebook group in its current form. And currently, I think, what was his name? I'm going to see if I can remember his name by the time we finish this video out. But essentially, he infiltrated it. It was D'Angelo Wallace. He infiltrated the Facebook group and essentially saw that like the way you get in now is you have to do these star challenges in this Facebook group, which is essentially you live stream yourself doing something like demeaning or embarrassing. And then like through completing of a certain amount of star challenges. So like you go to the grocery store dressed as like something or like a safari, like you're going on a safari and you talk about the fruit like it's safari animals and you have to live stream yourself doing this. So it's very much like humiliation based. And there's like other ones. So like the moderators are like pushing people to compete in these star challenges with the hopes that they'll get to go to the eventual attraction. Gabe, you sent me some TikToks of like people who had done that, but also like completed the torture experience, and like he told them they could participate anymore, even though they said they were fine, because they wanted the $20,000. So that's another thing he's like been accused of, is that like no matter how far you get through it, you don't actually get the money. So there's people who like literally have gotten their teeth pulled out, and he's like, all right, you're done, and you don't get the $20,000 that like realistically like you went into this situation hoping you would get. And there's a lot more. It's a lot of information. But like one thing that was like interesting is like he's claiming to have this $20,000 reward, but allegedly on Reddit, I found that he currently is in Tennessee. The haunt has like devolved into a less scary thing where it's mostly just like a fitness boot camp. And he is working at a Walmart in Tennessee, I guess to like fund what's left of the attraction. The website suggests that it's still up and running and going strong. But I don't know. As I said, that was a random Reddit post. I joined Reddit this week in this experience. So I was like, I'm gonna learn about stuff. But it seems like it's not maybe going well. It seems like it's really devolved into this entirely different situation. And that in the middle there, it got really dark. And that there's like lots of people who experience this and are afterwards very traumatized. There's an entire petition against it run by people who have been traumatized by this experience and want it to not continue. There's a Facebook group that operates similarly. And it just seems like, I don't know why he's just still able to do this when clearly it's doing a lot of harm. And one thing that we can expect at the Ghouls, maybe, is it seems that there is a trend that if you say bad things about him, he sends lots of people to talk meanly about you. So if you see our comments get a little weird, that might be why.
Yeah. Just protect, come out. Your Ghouls. Yeah. Yeah, you could see that like in some of the videos because he records like everything. And I saw this one video where he was just like, you all can't even see everything. Like they'll be released when he's dead and we'll be able to see some of the terrible things in there. But even like the videos that we do see, there's this interaction with people that gets really aggressive all of a sudden. Like he gets very defensive and then in that becomes aggressive. So like with the one person who was like, I was ready to finish this challenge. You took me out of it for BS reasons. Like I was completely ready. And he's like, harassing him and being like, oh, it's a hoax, isn't it? It's a hoax. Like getting really, really aggressive and uncomfortable for this person who just endured torture.
Like, and like clearly isn't happy with his experience either. And it seems like through all the critiques, he's just like kind of divulged into this like like I don't think he was ever like good, but like he's really just like escalated into this kind of like egotistical, you cannot say anything bad about him or you are literally like shunned. Like he cannot hear that he is doing anything wrong at all. And there was something else in relation to that was really interesting. I'm trying to remember. But essentially, it seems that as of late, it's become an entirely different experience, which is probably good if it's like watered down.
Yeah, watered down
a bit because it seemed like, like you're saying, like they spit blood into people's mouths, like fake blood, but blood into people's mouths. Put bugs in their mouths, like made them eat bugs and then throw up and then eat their own. Like it was really some wild stuff. Remove fingernail, like it's really crazy. And it should not be legal, but apparently is.
Yeah. And when you see any of those videos, they're really upsetting. Like they always come with like trigger warnings of sorts. And those are the things that he's like proudly showing. So like imagine the things he's just not showing us. And I did watch like entire like video of, someone who was analyzing, like this lawyer analyzing the waiver, and I was confused in the end because they went through this whole thing where it's like when it comes to like physical abuse and like this risk of danger and like and getting hurt that exists in like sports exists in very specific circumstances, which I don't feel like makes sense for the McKamey Manor. So I don't know. I don't know how.
Well, it's like illegal if you're like in a bar or like in a unregistered arena. So I feel like
why is it allowed?
This
why
would
are you allowed to
classify
punch
as
someone
an
in the face?
Registered arena. Like, why is this not considered assault and battery? It's like a really weird.
Yeah,
it should be.
Yeah, well, because he said people aren't allowed to legally sign the option of them being injured in that way. Like people are not allowed to be like, yes, injure me, unless it's like a surgery that's life-threatening. Like those are the times when you're like, okay, yes, you're going to injure me to save me, but you cannot sign away your safety. Like that's just not a thing that exists. Like this is why like the one doctor who was like helping patients that were die quicker and he went to prison for that because you can't do that. You can't just
Yeah, I remembered the things that I was gonna say.
Yes.
It was essentially that like the exit interviews that he records are usually done immediately after they've just been like literally tortured. So
and he's there.
And he's there like pushing for this. And it's a lot of people have claimed to either be like really pushed into saying positive things, even if they did not feel that way, or like villainized in their exit interview to make like it seem like their words don't matter. It's like usually while people are like still in shock, who like have not fully processed what they've gone through. And what I did notice in watching some of like the recounts of people is a very clear and common thing when you've experienced a large amount of trauma to not be able to recall the sequencing of events. And that's something
Mhm.
that's very common in people who like, I don't really know the
Like,
order of
what
what
happened?
happened.
Yeah.
And that's like a common thing that like courts will use to like invalidate claims of abuse and stuff like that, because trauma, unfortunately, the way the brain operates is it'll like mix up all the stuff because it's like literally hard for you to recount that
Mhm.
stuff. So that's also something that's pretty common in listening to the people recount like their experiences.
Yeah. There was
Um,
like that one TikTok of the woman who's like her lips are all busted and her head is like shaved in patches and she's like clearly like upset and she's like explaining like I don't know what happened to me but clearly like I have
yeah,
been abused and then she's like moving and there's a point where like the camera moves and you see that in the background there's someone like in her bathroom like staring and watching and then all of a sudden her tune changes where she's like,
yeah.
and I know that this was a transformative experience for me. Like it's so clear that she like turned and like somebody was there being like,
Yeah,
better
like
say the
you
things you're
can't,
supposed to say.
yeah, you can't like talk bad about the manor and your experience there. It seems like that's kind of like the situation a lot of people deal with. And the other really big red flag thing is that they've implemented a safe word, but that like
They
there are
don't always
many people
listen.
who have claimed to have it be that like he has not listened to their safe word. Like they've asked him to stop. They've
Mm-hmm.
used their safe word and it is ignored,
Mm-hmm.
which is just like a whole other level of like one.
Just disrespect, honestly.
Yeah, and it's like a lack of consent. Like you're making them go through all these consent points where you're like signing a waiver, etc. Like you
It
have,
goes both ways.
yeah, but like also like the law of enthusiastic consent. Like I know it does usually apply to like assault, but like it is very much, if you said at any point like you no longer have consent to be doing this to you, like then it is illegal.
Mm-hmm.
Ignoring their safe words, I think that could really go negatively for him if it does end up landing in a court of some kind.
Yeah. And that's just the thing about like abuse too, is like you can say yes to anything, but it's like anytime you say no, like now that's no. That's it. Like
Yeah,
that's just how that works. Like at
yeah.
any point
And
you're
there's
allowed to
laws
be
that
not
support
want
that
this to
too.
happen.
Yeah, there's like
Period.
laws that say that that is a fact, in fact, illegal.
Mhm.
So it also seems like there's like a lot of people who are like working to like get the shut down, working to get him shut down.
Mhm.
So I don't know. They may or may not gain traction. I don't know,
Yeah.
but
And I
it seems
think
like
like
that's all in the works currently.
yeah, and I think that's the things that like they have to stand on is like the breach in those contracts because like you're signing this waiver but you're also like there are you're allowed to say these are things I don't want to happen like these are things that like you cannot shave my head I have like this attached to very specific traumas and so for him to then use that after you said explicitly this is not allowed that is a breach of that contract abusing them there was allegedly people have reported sexual abuse and other kinds of abuse that are just like outside of the realm of what they agreed to, regardless of this 40-page waiver. Like at
Yeah,
any point, people are allowed to say, no, I do not want this anymore. And you have to follow that.
yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it seems like it's mostly just him enacting these like effed up fantasies that he has, or the actors who work for him have, and that like that's encouraged within that space, which is just very not safe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For anyone, including like the people who are doing those things, because like that has a psychological effect as well. No wonder it got really dark in the
Mm-hmm.
middle there, because like the more you do that to people, the less capacity for empathy you will have for
Mm-hmm.
feeling any sort of thing for the person you're doing that to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably largely why people saw a very big change in him the longer that this took place.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. You just can't do that to people and not come out changed in some way.
yeah.
Um, Yeah. Yeah, and I think, like, something that I found kinda interesting when we were gonna embark on this journey of the haunted attractions, and, like, when I first watched Hell House, was I was expecting that, someone in who's involved in the haunt got like messed up and started hurting people for real, because that's like a real like fear that people have, right? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, you like, I remember like you go into at most haunted attractions, like you're not allowed to dress up. Like
Yeah.
you like only the people who are employed and like presumably have had background checks and all these other things are the ones who are performing, and they are performers, right? Like they're not generally torture people.
Yeah.
But there's always like, I've always heard people, say like, well, what if a real killer got in? And it's like, that's just one that seems like a lot of variables that they can't control, which is just not a thing that they would do. Like they're just not conducive for a good serial killer environment. But that's what I thought like Hell House is going to be. Like, what if you went to a Hell House like
That's what I
haunted
thought it
attraction,
was,
and then
honestly.
they
Isn't there a
murdered you?
movie where that's a thing? Because that's what
I
I
don't
thought we
know.
were watching when we turned it on. And I was very confused at the end. And I was like, oh, it's just like
It's made
a
up.
cult?
It's make believe.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. And if anyone knows of a film in which that happens, let us know. So just one of those like,
I
oh, that's
remember
a
seeing
real
like
scary.
commercials for it. Like that was the thing. It's a movie that exists. I just don't know what that movie is because I thought it was House LLC and it's not.
No idea. I don't know. Like I know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the Trick or Treat movie I never watched that I see a lot about.
Yeah. But I guess also at the end of this, if you're thinking about going to McKamey Manor, almost everyone who's experienced is like, don't do it. So maybe don't.
Just a hard pass. Go do something else.
Yeah.
Or even just like extreme haunts. What I've heard is that they're just pretty disappointing. It's hard to do, like, it's hard to toe the, like, to get all up into the line of torture, but
Yeah.
not torture. Because then it's like, what are we doing here? As well, just like real life is torture sometimes. So just like
Yeah.
live regular. You don't have to do that. Like it doesn't make you better, I promise. It will not. It will not solve any of your problems, literally any of them. And yeah. So I would say yes, watch the first Hell House. And if you just want to you want the experience, watch the other ones. Get it as deep as me. And do not go to McKamey Manor.
Yeah. It seems like a bad time for everybody involved.
Yeah, it should just get closed down. You will find no end to the amount of videos about it too. So if this is something that's interesting to you, feel free. There's gonna be all the kinds of things in our blog too. So
yeah, I've like
me
gone down in
too.
it. I'm just like, I know too much now. And it's like also it's like, how do you watch all of that and then like not be like, that seems bad?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like it just seems like a really bad time. And I
Yeah.
feel like I feel judgy as heck. And
Yeah.
I'm sure that's how we come off, but like it seems like a really bad time.
Yeah. I saw one video of someone who went through who's pretty young and was like, coming to bat for McKamey Manor and was like,
Yeah.
oh, it was good. But like when people are like, how long did you last? She's like, I don't know. And like, it's like, what happened? And she's like, I don't know. It's like, how?
Yeah.
Like, you can't even.
Well, a
like,
lot of
you
people
blacked
defend it.
out.
Yeah, a
Like-
lot of people do defend it, and then years later, like that's what happened with Gab. She said she used to defend it like adamantly,
Mhm.
and then like realized how much trauma she had experienced as a result of this, and now is like, oh God, no, do not do this thing.
Mhm.
So like, yeah, it's probably largely a result of shock,
Yeah.
and like trying to like validate what happened to them.
Yeah.
Like cope with what happened to them.
Yeah. And to like also validate your choice to do that too. Like that's a big
Yeah.
thing with like cults as well, is just like at some point you get to this point where you're defending your choices, so you have to stick to what you said or what you believe, even in the like glaring evidence of it being wrong or a problem.
Yeah, like for sanity, yeah.
Because otherwise it's like, okay, this whole thing has been a lie. Like all that stuff happened to me. Like you have to acknowledge then. Like then you have to look at your trauma in the face and be like, oh my God, that all that stuff happened to me and I allowed it to happen to me. or it was like, my trust was abused in this way. And that's another form of trauma. So
Yeah.
instead, they're going to defend it because that's a safe
Yeah.
place for them. And they're defensive because no one wants to be like, wow, you're such an idiot. Because that's what they get. They get a bunch of hate from
Yeah.
people who are like, wow, you signed the waiver, you have no right to complain. And so they're like, I guess I can't. Like, that's just
Yeah.
classic abuse victim situations to be in.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's not a great time. That seems pretty sad.
Yeah. It's a lot of levels, a lot of things.
Yeah.
So
We did it. We talked about both things. We did it.
yes.
Woo.
So, like I said, in the future, we'll have an episode, a special that's going to be about specifically the haunted attraction at Eastern State Penitentiary. And we'll talk to someone who was there at the beginning and someone who's there now. And still have haunted things happening that we're going to be dissecting. So I hope you enjoy this series. Definitely let us know what you think. Drop a like and a comment. And don't get married.
Delete your kids.
All right. Yeah. Bye.